Well, joining us now, a very special panel of guests looking at where Ukraine stands at this juncture and whether this visit can actually make a difference. Dr. Mridula Ghosh, Associate Professor at the oldest university in Ukraine, joins me now. Glenn Carl, former Deputy National Intelligence Officer for Transnational Threats, a career CIA officer, joins me from the United States, and former Foreign Secretary Shashank. Thanks very much for being with us. Mridula, let me come to you first. Are you optimistic, hopeful about the visit of Prime Minister Modi?
Certainly everyone is hopeful because first I am hopeful because this sets a new level in our relations. Ukraine became independent in 1991 from the Soviet Union. Since then, there hasn't been any prime minister's visit here. Only two presidents visited, President Shankar Dayal Sharma in 1993 and then in 2005, President Abdul Kalam. So, from the political standpoint, the level of relationship is definitely going to open a new chapter. That's what is, everyone will say that. Anybody from the point of protocol, from the point of bilateral relations, everything. So, that way, it opens definitely a different chapter. Mm-hmm. And it's a new beginning. I wouldn't say good or bad, but it's definitely a turning point.
Sure. Ambassador Shashank, what out of the box? Open up your, your crystal gazing ball and tell us from all those decades of experience, what is that out-of-the-box solution that the Prime Minister can bring to this country?
Prime Minister Modi, as the leader of India, can say things which many other people may not be able to say. For example, he was able to tell President Putin that this is not the era of war and one should try to find a peaceful diplomatic solution. The same way, he has been able to join the Quad with reference to threats against the Asian countries from China, and especially on India. But at the same time, when China kept saying that India is joining Asian NATO, India said, look, we'll settle our own disputes with China. We don't want to make it into a kind of a multilateral situation. So I'm quite sure that Prime Minister will carry this kind of a message that you can keep your independence of action, of thought, without necessarily turning into a multilateral joint venture. So I think he would be able to say these things more freely. Secondly, I think since there is a Western perception that Prime Minister Modi, in getting closer to President Putin, they are both becoming very irresponsible leaders, and India is an irresponsible country. Modi is an irresponsible leader. So I think he would be able to correct that impression, which is very, very important from the perspective of the Indian people. So I think he would be doing things for Europe, if he can carry the message of peace and the Indian perception. And at the same time, he would be able to tell the Indian people that he is able to go for peace and not necessarily just go along with President Putin to help him, encourage him to mount more attacks on Ukraine.
Sure. Ambassador, I just wanted to go across to Glenn Carl. Glenn, it just seems that both Ukraine and Russia continue to have a stomach to fight, and it's brinkmanship at this level. Is that your sense as well, that who actually can outlast the other side when it comes to putting soldiers on the battlefield?
I think that is the case right now, in particular with the incursion or invasion by Ukraine into Russia. I think also pretty clearly President Putin has indicated by his actions, really more than by his statements, that he has been waiting for the result of the American election in the hope, which I'm sure he's trying to facilitate, that Donald Trump is reelected, in which case he is relatively confident that he could see NATO fractured and American support ended for Ukraine. But that is less probable than it was a month ago. But until the election, neither side has any real interest in even starting significant feelers. With one qualification I'll put on that. I did think that the prisoner exchange between the United States and Russia, which involved a number of other NATO members, European states too, that there was a the slightest of hints by Putin that, yes, the war is going on, but negotiation between us, the West and Russia, is possible, which indicated to me there was a chance of the beginning of negotiations sometime at the end of the year. But I don't think so now.
Mridula, how does this end?
What does it end? Which? The war?
The war.
The war has to end someday, you know. The war will end with peace, definitely. But what kind of peace? That is what the Ukrainians worry about. Will it be a just peace? And, you know, President Zelensky put forward this 10-point plan for the G20 summit in Indonesia, Bali. And after that, it has been the most talked over thing all over the place. And we have had diplomats, analysts commenting on it. There are several segments of this plan. And the best idea of this plan is that countries can choose the topics they want to choose. The first is nuclear security, food security. The first 5 points of the plan deal with the whole of humanity. When Ukraine puts its own very core interests to the last, you know, like retribution, like territorial integrity and all those issues. And I believe that the international community, together with our Prime Minister Modi, has already said, reiterated time and again, that it is the territorial integrity and sovereignty and the UN Charter will be respected. So taking those mantra, even if we take them, you know, and look at the real politic on the ground, that, you know, there's a stalemate. Now you have the Kurds going in of the Ukrainians, and now you have certain stalemate, certain advances by the Russians. So there is definitely, to quote Mr. Modi, the battlefield is not the solution. Even putting soldiers, it will not end. So therefore, we need to seek a different solution. And what will that definite solution be? That also, of course, you know, I believe that Prime Minister Modi, perhaps with a number of other powers, not him alone, could somehow forge an alliance which could bring to the table a very good analysis of this 10-point plan.
Ambassador Shashank, you know, at one level, this seems to be also an effort at telling countries around the world that you can think what you want about Indian foreign policy, but we'll do what we feel is right. So on the one hand, you've got Modi visiting Moscow. On the other hand, a few weeks later, he's over here in Ukraine, or he will be here shortly. What is there a message in that?
One message has been that lead has been taken by countries like China, Saudi Arabia, South Africa, Brazil, in coming out with solutions of their own from the global south or from the Asian continent about bringing peace in Europe. I think Prime Minister Modi wanted to convey that India is also for peace. India is willing to take a lead, earlier having been the G20 summit venue in Delhi. So I think that was a very successful one. So it's not just the global south that he's representing, but he wants to bring about real peace in Europe. And if more and more countries in Europe feel that American elections might bring about a situation, as we saw in Afghanistan, there was a sudden departure of the US troops from Afghanistan, we should not see something like this in Ukraine, where the American support is finished totally immediately after the American elections in November. So therefore, what countries like India are trying to say that, well, one must try to find a solution. Of course, there should be a meeting ground from both sides, and the European countries should suggest to Ukraine what will be a doable thing. And then perhaps one can see how Russia and other countries can also go along with that solution. But if in case the feeling is that this is the time to go for the maximum gains of the war, because one side or the other side is gaining momentum, then I think then, of course, it's for the countries themselves to decide what they want to do.
Yeah. Glenn Carl, a final question to you. How closely is Ukraine's fight linked to the Democrats winning the election in the United States?
I think it's quite linked to it, since there's less talk today in the campaign right now in the United States about Donald Trump's associations and links to Russia, but I've spoken in public about them for a decade, and as have many others. And Trump has made clear that if he is elected, that America will become profoundly isolationist and will leave Ukraine in the lurch, and he will welcome whatever Vladimir Putin seeks to do. And I think the discussion about there's a peace effort or this could help balance things by Mr. Modi's visit to Ukraine, I think really misses the point. His visit to Ukraine is to serve Indian interests, and those interests are to counterbalance his visit to Moscow. And in so doing, he might take a little bit of the disfavor that is in the thoughts of Western nations at no cost to him. And talking about how peace is desirable is nice, but that's a little bit like saying, well, okay, there's been a rape, but you just have to sort of accept the fact that the rapist will stay in your bed, and that's okay.
Well, I'd like to thank you all very much for being with us and, offering that perspective ahead of the visit of the Prime Minister to Kyiv, a short visit, less than 10 hours as I understand it.